This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio is brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. J&B Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures. Alrighty, hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the program once again. Peter Bowman over there. Why'd you scratch all that out?
Hey, what's up, girls?
Why'd you scratch
Not
all
just
that
guys.
out? Why'd you scratch all that out?
I don't like it. I think we're going to reread that one. I'm going to do my own. I'm going to ad-lib
Do a
that
better
sucker.
job?
Yeah.
Better job of it?
Yeah.
Welcome to the program.
Like
Angelo,
that, eh?
Viola,
Well, I
Peter
can't get
Bowman,
away with anything around
Vova, Dean, and all other supporting cast members, wherever they may be. Wherever they may be. We got Joe over there somewhere. We got the Countess over there. We got Nick somewhere. I don't know where he's gone. What a wonderful show. As per usual, a little fish talk with the doc.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's my favorite.
Fish
so
talk
good.
with the doc.
There's
Coming
our
up.
doc. Look at that guy. He's just up there. He knows it all.
Dean, did we get some breaking news about his numbers going up in terms of what's
right
the deal
before
with
we
that?
went there? So normally I copy paste like a bio of him because we've had him on so many times. But when I sent him the script about an hour before we went to air, he sent me an updated version of it that he wanted us to read today.
Oh, he didn't like your.
I spit on you. Smarten up.
Yep.
Well, then we'll do it. We'll save that until he comes on. How's
Okay,
that?
sure.
We'll do it live.
But there is a change in that. But the stuff that we do know is normal and legit. He's a biology professor at Carleton University. Published a lot of papers, peer-reviewed papers.
Come on now.
And lately has been inducted into Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame.
Woohoo!
That's very
yes.
cool. Our very own, the
Golf
lovely,
clap.
the talented Dr. Stephen Cooke will be joining us here
Come
shortly.
on now.
Before we do any, and we're
Answering
going to
your questions. by
That's
the way.
right. We're going to turn you loose on him because Dean has collected a series of questions. I don't know where and from or how,
We got him everywhere.
but he got them everywhere. Apparently,
He's a collector. He's a collector. He knows how to do it.
He's a collector. Anyways, there's a bunch of your questions that we're going to ask the doc here in a few minutes.
Love it.
But first, let's take a little trip down to fishingcanada.com, the store, shall we?
Hey, I like that.
A little trip together.
Yes. I'm a little hippie. Take a little trippy.
A lot of new stuff going in and a lot of old stuff going out. That's all I want to say about that.
Come on now.
If you haven't been there lately, you need to get there and check it out.
Look
That's
at us. We're kind of nice
That's
and
it.
neat here the way we're tired today. So
You're tired? You're tired every day. Every day we go into a meeting.
It's only
you're
when
tired.
it's only when I pry on it.
All right.
Inside joke there, everybody.
Listener feedback in response to the Mackenzie River Monsters, which just aired recently, Dean. Is that
At
correct?
time of recording, it was the last episode that aired. By the time this comes out, it's probably 2 episodes ago.
All right. So recently, that'd be recent.
It's
Still in
worth
the last
checking it
couple
out.
of weeks.
It's worth checking it out.
Mackenzie River Monsters, and they truly were monsters. But anyways, in response to that, listener feedback is here. At Frontier Fishing with Ryan MacD.
Wow.
Ryan MacD. Frontier Fishing with Ryan MacD via YouTube.
Has he got a YouTube channel, Dean? Do you know?
He does, yeah. He didn't have a whole lot posted, but
Okay.
Oh, well, go check him out.
Okay.
That's Frontier Fishing with Ryan MacD via YouTube. Says I had the opportunity to guide at Brabant Lodge back in 2005-06.
Oh, that's a while ago.
05-06, so that would be a few years ago,
Oh, yeah.
right? And had an incredible experience. And how could you not? But I grew up fishing and hunting in southwestern and northern Ontario and caught many northern pike in my short life at that point. So obviously he was young and he caught many a pike. However, when he got to this place at the Mackenzie, that redefined.
That ain't no pike fishing down there. That's
When I
pike.
worked at Brabant Lodge, we had days where we actually caught 100 plus fish. Now, you know, you hear that all the time, eh? People saying, "Yeah, I got 100 fish," and in most cases they caught a lot of fish, but 100 fish
She's pretty well catch.
Think
and
about it.
by the whole day.
If it takes, especially pike, if it takes
Especially if they're like that.
3 minutes, let's say you're like horsing them in.
Yeah, that'd be horsing it in, and then pictures like there are fish like that you take pictures of and all. That'd be more than 3 minutes, but for some of them, right?
But 5 minutes.
But
Like,
the
if you
average,
literally
right, the average would be down from that. It would be 2.5. We'll say 2.5 minute average.
average, and you caught 100 of them. Now, so that is about 250 minutes. But in between all of that, you got to retie, you got to cast, you got to get it the other route. Like there's things that you're doing.
Absolutely.
I don't even think it'd be
100 fish a
possible. However, having experienced this place that
Brave
we're
Ant Lodge.
talking about,
It's possible.
If it's possible to do, not due to the fish, but due to yourself being physically in the position to be able to do it within a reasonable period of time a day, this is the place where you could do it.
Oh my God!
So
without
I know
a doubt, without a
when
doubt.
when he says catching 100 plus
Yeah.
fish a day,
They won't all be that size. There's a 20-pound plus pike or whatever like that.
But they weren't
there's-
far from it.
There's a lot of them that size. When you get into these bigger fish, it's almost like a double fishery there we went for the big ones. We knew it's going to be less numbers, but it's going to be a lot bigger. When they said you want to go out after supper for catch. Remember that spot we went to, the first island out from the lodge, and we caught 30 in less than an hour for sure.
Sure.
Just bang, 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 including some good ones. So it is that 100 fish a day is so possible there, for sure.
Ryan MacD goes on to say, I had the summers of my life and an appreciation to have had the opportunity to work and guide on the Mackenzie River. And this was our first experience on the Mackenzie River as well, at least this end of it.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what else we can say about it, because almost to the point where we might want to start downplaying it because people will think we're making it up. But it is, without question, and this goes for any species of fish, it is, I think, a fishery that is unparalleled.
Yeah.
Because for a number of reasons. Number one, it's relatively easy to access every day. So we're not talking a big body of water. It's not like going to Costa Rica and off the coast bill fishing, which you can't access every day. This is accessible every day. It's in the river, Mackenzie River, and it's shallow water. So it's not big water that can beat the hell out of you. This is a shallow, I don't know, average depth is maybe 6 feet, 8 feet.
Well,
whatever.
we were fishing, that's exactly it. 6 feet of water, pretty much.
And literally, the old proverbial, every cast has a fish. Literally.
Mm-hmm. You're certainly expecting one on every cast, that's for sure, right?
So,
and the beauty of this fishery, let's just get into this very quickly, that when Angie's saying it's like maybe the best in the world or whatever, let's compare it to a far northern Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, something like that. These fish move into back bays, they spawn, and they almost immediately start moving out, to deeper water, and then they're out in the abyss somewhere like that. And the time that the Brave Ant Lodge is open, so they're fishing in the peak time, and they don't have a lot of time to do this on, but these fish seem to have a lot longer of transition. So they go in to the Mackenzie to spawn, and they work their way out slowly. It's not like they boom out to the next points and then out to the cabbage beds and that. And the cabbage beds and whatever they're working into are the same spots that they fish earlier in the year. They just kind of follow them back out towards Great Slave, but it's all the same area, and it just lasts for I think that's July and August for sure are their two peak months, right? But then I'm sure they go earlier and later than that by a bit. These big girls, just let me finish this. These big girls are there that entire time for their entire open to close season of the lodge, which is huge.
I said this at the time on the episode, and I'll say it again now. I would hate to be born as the prey on that river.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Yeah. I can't even imagine what they go through. Well,
even a small pike, because we saw one eating right in front of the lodge. We had one and we were wondering what it was. It was a pike with another pike in his mouth.
Yeah,
so it'd be a dog eat dog world down there for sure. That'd be ugly.
Just an unbelievable unbelievable experience, and it's great that Randy MacD experienced it himself firsthand and agrees with everything that we did show on the episode. And if you haven't seen the episode, if for whatever reason you missed it, it would have been, as Dean said, a couple of weeks ago. Go check it out on YouTube, and it's called the Mackenzie River Monsters. It is although we experienced it and we were there. I can tell you, when we watched the episodes that we produced, we even had to kind of shake our heads a little bit to sort of remember just how good it was.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of the drone footage will show you the area that we're fishing and how easy it was to fish. I mean, was there an easier pike fishing experience?
No, you're right. That's
just,
what I'm saying.
as long as you can see
Work
that line,
channel,
right? As long as you can see
break.
that ledge, and the drone shows it perfectly. It was crazy.
And they had for our sake, they had Garmin Force trolling motors on the front, the foot controlled trolling motors and remote. And man, I'll tell you what, did that ever make a difference for us? That made a huge difference.
I wonder if it would have been the same without a trolling motor.
No, because many times we anchor locked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we did that anchor lock thinking the wind was perfect because there's current and there's wind, and it was just set up so perfect for us for those days that we were on the water. The wind was the same direction every day. Yeah. And we just held off the brake and then moved down a little bit further with the trolling motor, then stop when you want. It was fun. That's for sure.
Anyways, Randy MacD, great reaching out to us, and thank you for the comments on the show. And he goes on to say that he's glad to see that the lodge is finally getting profiled on our show. Well done, guys. Awesome job catching some in canoe as well. We caught some in canoe too.
That's right.
In canoe during the shoot, which are very rare, but apparently starting to show up with a little more frequency, according to Peter Fox.
Oh, really? Okay.
The lodge owner.
Cool.
So I don't know whether I don't know. Well, we blame everything else on. Let's just call it climate change. Maybe the canoe are getting more comfortable.
It's a cool fish.
Conservation Corner, brought to you by the Invasive Species Centre.
Let's get at this one. Look at something different.
Am I excited?
Hey.
There you go. It's here, Dean. I got it, buddy. Hey, let me ask you a question. Which fish has invaded almost every corner of the planet, aside from Antarctica, and caused notable damage in regions where it has become prolific? Give up?
I give up, Ange.
All right, well, the answer is that guy, the tench. I never even heard of this thing before. The tench apparently is that species. They're a medium-sized, deep-bodied fish with small scales, rounded fins, and a single barbel on each side of the mouth. So that'd be like a little mini carp. No, a little mini. Yeah, it would be, huh?
Barbels,
little barbels, yeah.
Yep. Mini though. Don't see them on there. You can't see them, but
no. The head of a perch, you said, right?
Head. It looks like a yellow perch. Really, the head for sure.
These striking olive-colored fish were brought into Canada illegally in 1986. Where they then escaped and made their way into the St. Lawrence River. Well, that's once you're there, you're
brought
pretty much
illegal. I wonder why they were brought in. We're going to have to find that out.
Yeah.
I know they're a sport fish in England.
Oh, big time.
They like them up there.
Big time they are.
It's probably the English.
Well, no, I don't want to, sound negative, but if that makes sense, and the reason being is that the St. Lawrence River is probably the second largest English carp fishery on the planet.
Yeah,
now.
the British coming over to
They own it.
Right, yeah.
They own it. They own all the carp fishery outfits on the St. Lawrence. That might make sense now that you say that, but boy, that would be awful if that happened.
And they wouldn't do that. Why would
no.
Would they? Not for over here, no.
No.
Although they got carp, they got such a population of carp. No, I disagree with that.
Although not established in the Great Lakes, they have since been spotted as far south as the Bay of Quinte in Lake Ontario.
Wow.
So they're on the move, folks. Tench are highly adaptable to new environments and capable with native fishes like minnows. They compete with native fishes like minnows, bullhead, and suckers in waters where they've invaded by eating significant amounts of snails, insects, and other benthic invertebrates.
What does that mean?
Benthic.
I don't know.
Benthic. What does that mean?
What is that, Dean? What's a benthic?
In the water, living on the
Thick
bottom.
Ben. It's a guy named Ben is really thick.
Benthic. All right.
Not only could they outcompete native species for food, but it is predicted that tench could decrease water quality and increase the transmission of different parasites and diseases between other fishes in the Great Lakes. Okay, that's not cool. This is why Ontario has made them a prohibited species under the Invasive Species Act, meaning it is illegal to import, possess, transport, and this is the big one, or release them anywhere into the province. So, you know what? I'm going to make a point here now. I'm assuming release them. If you catch one, it should be illegal to release one too, right?
I think it is.
Yeah,
It's
I would
like
think
it's
that's
like
part
any
of the
invasive
release.
species. In other
Right.
words, if you catch one, don't put it back.
Don't put it back.
Right.
And that is a problem. Maybe now we'll go to the Brits. That might be a problem here if they don't really realize what this is. It's a prized catch, because I know a guy that fishes in Ontario and has always wanted to catch a tench, and he's a carp fisherman, and he's always wanted to catch a tench.
Really?
Yeah, but I wonder if he knows that, hey, buddy, if you catch one, you got to kill it. So I don't know if it'd be
How big do these things
I don't
get?
think they're very big. The ones I've seen in Britain are, smallish.
Like a small sucker kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I think that sucker size, maybe. I'm not sure on that one, but they're not giant. I know that for
To
sure.
learn more about tench, like we need to clearly, because this was just put on our desk, by the way, just so that you know.
Which we were very happy to
We're
read
happy,
for.
no problem. Including how to identify them, which, just like the grass carp, I mean, that's the important thing. If you don't know what it looks like, then how can you be vigilant about it? Visit the Invasive Species Centre's website. If you've seen a tench or another invasive species in the wild, report it to the Invading Species Hotline or online at eddmaps.com. Has anybody ever figured out what that acronym is?
EdMaps.
Edmaps.com. Dean, do we know that?
We could find it.
Yeah, we should
Dean's
find
gonna
out.
find that for
yeah,
us.
we should find that. I've asked before. Nobody's helped me with that. eddmaps.com. And help keep our waterways free of invasive. It seems like we've got invasive
You can get Volvo to
species.
check that out with his other hand. He can
No,
type
he's
that
got-
in while he's
but
doing
he's
this.
got that-
Well, he can take it up for that, and he's going to
He's
do
got
this.
that hand in there working, like rooting out something. He's mining. He's mining for minerals.
Early detection and distribution mapping system.
Early
Oh.
detection and distribution map system. Wow.
Yep.
.com. There you go. Find out more about the tench. Don't get tense. Just find out about the tench. Brought to you by the Invasive Species Centre.
Come on now.
Well done.
All right.
Well done.
What's in the news, Mr. Bowman?
A bunch of pigs.
Well, there you go. You and your buddies. Hey, I've
Yeah.
taught you that before. You don't agree with
Used to
me.
go on a pig hunt there in Napanee back in the day, eh? And then, wild pigs may be spreading CWD, chronic wasting disease. So this is normally, we're associating that with deer, whitetail, right?
I
believe.
wonder how many people know that that was your nickname that your wife gave you before you were married.
You're wrong.
No.
No, you're wrong.
Oh, I'm not.
No,
Oh, it's true.
The name,
it's
no,
true.
No, the name is right.
Oh.
She didn't give it to me.
Oh. I thought she
Your
did.
other girls that worked in this company gave it to me.
Laura.
I think Laura or Pam, but I think it was Laura that gave it to me. So we'll might as well get into it right now.
Sure.
The nickname that Ange was referring to, since I was talking about wild pigs, blah, blah, blah. My nickname was Pig Boy back
Pig
in the
Boy.
day.
That
Hey,
was
Pig
it.
Boy. And then Laura would call me Piggy. Hey, Piggy.
And then she go,
Yeah. And it was just because, it wasn't really because I rooted around like a pig.
although he did.
But what I really meant was that my language is sort of less than
Optimal
church going or
for
religious.
a person of your stature. Less than optimal
Like
for a person of your
if I want to
stature.
say it a lot of times, I just say it, and then I think, oh, oops, maybe I
that
shouldn't have
wasn't
said that. But so Pig Boy was yeah.
I thought it was your wife. I thought
No, as
Lisa
a matter
gave
of
you
fact,
that.
I don't even think she ever referred to me that, honestly, back then.
Wow.
I don't think so. Laura loved that.
Wow,
name.
because you
She loved it.
were still impressing her at the time, right? With your
Oh.
How you doing?
Oh, trust me,
Right?
she knows she knew right off the hop the piggishness that comes out of this mouth. There's no doubt about it. She knew right off the hop. That's for sure. Anyways, chronic wasting disease, which is the whitetail thing normally, right, Dean? Is
Right.
that
Any ungulate can get it, like any type of deer, moose, anything with antlers normally can get it.
right?
Yeah.
So now they're saying that wild pigs,
With no antlers.
No antlers. yeah.
tusks, maybe they got some tusks,
Tusks,
right?
yeah,
Don't
maybe.
they? Those wild boars. The study detection of prions, which is a protein. I'm assuming that's part of this chronic wasting disease. Dean, is that correct?
Yeah, that's
again?
the cause of the disease. So the disease is it's kind of like mad cow
Yeah.
disease, but essentially a prion is just a protein that causes other proteins in your body to like deform and fold, and that's what creates all the problems.
Well, you know what it's like when you pry on it all day like you do,
Well,
right?
see,
Things happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what's happening to these guys.
I like that. I'm going to use
Too
that
much
one.
prying on
Too
it.
much prying. I think maybe Nick might be the guy that we have to really. His protein levels might be a little high right now.
Alrighty.
So the detection of prions in wild pigs from areas with reported chronic wasting diseases cases in the United States. It used a prion amplification test and identified prions in tissues of wild pigs living in the U.S. in areas where CWD is prevalent.
And unlike deer, I think pigs would be more. If in fact this becomes an issue, I would think they're probably better adapted at being able to spread this thing than deer. Pigs are
It's weird though. It says they did not contract the disease, but did appear to be carrying the prion.
Yes, so they're not affected by
So
it.
they're a vector.
They're a vector.
They think that could be the case, yeah.
And then they could give that disease out. Eventually, somehow it could spread the disease.
I guess so, like
Because what
for-
Ange is saying, if they can, that's a
Yeah.
way bigger problem than a deer.
Oh, much bigger.
Holy
So
shit, they're nuts.
from my understanding, this is only transferred through the eating of meat. So I think that's how pigs would get it. I'm not sure. I don't really understand how that would then spread back to a deer that's a herbivore. So
Right.
it's a little bit strange to
Right.
me, but maybe,
Right. You're
maybe
thinking-
it can be passed through like the feces or something.
Yeah.
But
So would wild pigs in the wild eat deer?
if they were
Yeah,
dead,
they'll
They're
eat.
dead.
Oh,
They-
yeah.
they-
hell yeah. They'll
So-
eat anything.
So that could be the way they're
Yeah.
doing it, right?
yeah.
No, that's the way they're getting it.
Right.
But what Dean is saying
No, I
is
know. I'm just trying to
how
figure
would
that.
they give it back?
Right.
Spread it. Well, feces obviously would be an issue if a deer comes
would think
on
so,
to
yeah.
a pile of pig feces.
Would there be wolves, for instance, that would eat the pigs?
Well,
And then would
there
a
is
wolf
that.
get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, possible. I
Right?
don't know. It's weird.
is
This
weird.
whole thing. This predates you, Dean.
Oh,
Before
yeah,
you were
way
even
predates me.
born,
Yeah.
we were talking about this CWD, and it's very doomy and gloomy, the subject, but it never seems to get beyond that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always, a report
in the
says
back,
that
yeah, it's-
according to, and
The
that's
last piece
fine.
of news in the outdoor world.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way,
Yeah.
But would you eat a piece of meat that you knew was contaminated? Like, would you eat like a steak from a deer that you knew had the disease?
no, I
I
wouldn't.
don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, just psychologically,
Now,
you couldn't.
depending
do
on the circumstances, if it was you're in a
last
camp
meal.
somewhere, it's the last meal, and then you're gonna
that.
like,
Yeah, live or die, of course.
I'd have to think about it, but no.
And still to this day, it's not been CWD is not in Ontario.
Nope.
Still,
Yep.
yeah,
Apparently.
Manitoba and Quebec.
apparently
each
we're
side.
surrounded,
And every state around us.
and every state around it.
Completely
That is
surrounded.
it, boys.
and it's been that way.
Since
I'm telling
before Dean
you,
was born.
Before you were born, I was reporting this stuff on radio, that we were surrounded. But thank God, it hadn't hit Ontario yet.
Yeah.
And here we are, almost 30 years later, and we're still saying
kind of
it's all
here,
around
here.
us. But thank God, it's not here yet. There's something weird going
There's
on.
something weird there. That's for sure. How
There's something
can we be
weird
so?
going on.
Boy, we're good at it. Hey, we're good. When we want to put the blockers up, we can block. We can block shit. Yeah, we're good. Ontario.
But yet the tench got through the blockade. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make sense.
Damn tench.
There's something going on here. I don't know
All
what it
our
is.
efforts are at CWD and nothing else so far. That's what it is. There's no
There's
effort on any
something-
other invasive, just CWD.
There's a lot of conspiracies around the disease we should go over one time.
I would like to do that
That it
because
was
I'm
made in a
starting
lab.
I'm starting to think that maybe it warrants that
Yeah.
approach.
That'd be a fun one.
You know, Fan question of the week. By the way, that's on fishingcanada.com, the news section. That's there right now if you want to get a little more in depth about this incredible stroke of luck that we have here in Ontario. Being surrounded by the Walking Dead, and yet we've been managing to keep them at bay.
Shaun of the Dead. I like that movie. That was good.
Fan question of the week brought to you by our good friends fishfindermounts.com.
Give me a hell yeah.
Fishfindermounts.com. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, our good friend Jack Summers from Radio World.
I know Jack.
Yeah, of course you know Jack. Who doesn't know Jack?
True enough. Vova, do you know Jack Summers?
Sure
Vova knows Jack.
Everybody. There is nobody that doesn't know Jack Summers.
Wow.
Nobody. Anyways, we were commenting about fishfindermounts.com.
And there's nobody that Jack Summers doesn't know.
Well, that's true too. So anyways, fishfindermounts.com brings you a fan question of the week. Now, this is not to be confused, or is this the
No.
award?
Yes, this
is
is to be confused with that.
Very
It is
good.
to be confused with that. So this is the point in time where we, Peter and I, have the onerous responsibility.
Okay.
That's
The
right.
responsibility is upon us to decide live here on the show whether this question
lot of
is
pressure.
worthy of 100 buckaroos
A lot of pressure, Ange.
on the fishingcanada.com store. Here we go. Submitted by Todd Kohut.
Come on now.
What?
Kohut via YouTube. So, and now in order for this to qualify, it had to be done via YouTube only.
right.
Yeah.
It won't qualify unless it
And
was
subscribed, right?
And Todd had to subscribe to what?
To our channel,
Our channel being what?
Fishing Canada. No, the Fishing Canada show on
Fishing
YouTube.
Canada
Yes.
show. There you go.
Thank you, Todd, for subscribing. That was very
All right.
nice. Very nice.
Todd says,
You the man.
what's your thoughts on the pleasure boat operator's license after all these years? ? In your experience, has it helped much with the safety on our waters? Personally, I see lots of boaters who don't seem to know the rules. No, they didn't. That's what Todd wants to know.
Well, Todd, I'm going to agree with you on this. What I've seen out on that water is close to insanity sometimes. And everybody on that water should have a boater's license. I'm assuming they do have a boater's license, right? So if all this mayhem is going on out there and you have your license, it ain't working.
My question to Todd and you, now that you say that, because I spend a fair amount of time on the water
Yes,
as
sir.
well.
Yeah.
And
You're not a bad boat driver either. You're not bad.
I question, I haven't seen that much boat usage that looked like somebody didn't know what they were doing. So I
Really?
need to ask you, give me some examples.
Well, I'd say mostly, a lot of the, I don't want to use a brand here. What do you call them? Jet skis.
Oh.
Hey, they need a license, bud.
Oh, but wait a minute. That has less to do with boat licenses and more to do with a lifestyle than it has anything else.
They are a
those
vessel.
folks-
They are a water vessel that is the same as a boat. That is the same as everything else, and
Okay.
you should be doing the same thing
All right.
and that kind of stuff.
Here's my problem with that comment. You know yourself that you get into whether it's a car or a boat or what other means of transportation. There are some products that just lend themselves to making you look like you're reckless and wild
Right.
than others.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that those units, you mentioned jet ski, which is a brand, but that's not
No,
what
it's not. Jet ski is the
is it
generic.
Is that generic? So jet ski is one of those products because
Correct.
you
For
get on
sure.
it, crank it, and automatically you look like you are
Bobby Dazzler.
reckless. You're a biker.
He is the original Bobby Dazzler.
Bobby
remember?
Dazzler.
He was a jet skier. Yeah, he didn't have a license.
That's right. Bobby Dazzler got his start from that.
That's an inside joke for us, but it's true.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
one of
It
those,
gives you
one of those vehicles that is, it's
like a
it
snow
looks-
machine. Same thing. You get that thing, you can go 100 mile an hour. I'm going to
Yeah.
go 100 mile an
And
hour. I'm
they're
going to
going,
rip, and they're going to
yeah.
hit you.
So, but in terms of boating,
Well, okay, I saw not that long ago, was it last year or the year before, I saw an incident where if you took your boater's exam, you would know that, this is going to sound so stupid, but you would know that if there's a red pin and a green pin, a red buoy and a green buoy, you go between those buoys because you took the test and you learned all about it.
Right.
And this person racked up on the rocks
Right.
just outside of those two running full bore.
I've done that
running
before.
full,
do you remember?
right beside the channel.
Do you remember? I can tell you the incident, and I can tell you exactly what happened on the Upper French River when our mapping device
Okay.
went crazy. Remember,
Yes.
it pushed our tracking our
But you
our-
went by the mapping device and not the buoys.
right.
Right.
I wasn't even looking at them. I was following our path home.
Right.
And remember, it went off course on
Okay.
us.
Okay,
It
you might
didn't-
have to get your license revoked.
Exactly. No,
But anyways,
yeah.
I mean, and that happens on a time and time again. And then
Yeah.
and the 10K zones where you by law you must slow down in these zones. Now maybe people don't give a shit about that, but they should know it. That little whatever 9K, 10K, whatever it is, that white buoy says slow down, mofo, and then go through here nice and slow, and then back out there, and they're not abiding by it. So could that be ignorance or just I don't give a shit or whatever? But I think there's a lot of still people don't really understand the rules. That
I think that's it.
on the sailboat thing coming
Oh.
at, you know what I mean? You gotta sailboats can't turn as easily as our Prince craft can, so we can get out of the way of that sailboat a little easier.
The only reason I'm asking that question is because could we not apply this discussion to
The road.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And I'll take it one step further. And I'm not protecting people who are ignorant of the law here. Don't get me wrong. But I haven't done a driver safety course for 50 years or 60 years. I would probably be challenged a little bit today going through a course,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's not because I'm a bad driver, not because I didn't get legally licensed, but sometimes you don't, especially in boating, okay, because sometimes you just don't store all of that information that you cram for when you do an exam, especially an online exam.
Because they don't,
Right.
because most people don't want to get the license for the information. They want to get the license, they just go. And that's it. I'm going to do all this. I have to do this. I hate this, but I'll do it. And then forgotten forever. So,
By the way, those are the same people who take their life jackets and throw them into the bowels of their boat and bury them with everything else that they bring in the boat, only because they know that that's okay by the law.
okay, yeah. I wonder if that law was changed, and then how many people would put that in their head? That's part of your licensing. That you went to the course and you have to wear your life jacket. I wonder how many people would still do it. People wouldn't be doing it. Like everybody wouldn't be doing it until it came to a lot of fines.
Seat belts, right?
Yeah, took a while.
I remember
It took a
driving
while.
without my seatbelt
Oh my God.
illegally at first for
Oh, yeah?
the longest time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't
The
remember.
longest time. I'm not going to put that on. And then I went through a phase where it was hit and miss. Sometimes I'd put it on, and
Sometimes you saw a cop, you throw it over the shoulder.
how many times have we done
No,
that?
actually, that back then it was just that.
Yeah,
it wasn't a
just
shoulder,
about,
right? It was
yeah.
just the waist belt
So,
like that. So.
I don't know. But I do agree with them that we've got far too many boaters out there that don't seem to really have a
And
grasp
there's
of
quite
the rules.
simple rules, too.
Or respect for the rules.
Exactly.
And respect for
other
other
boaters. That's
Yeah.
the big one. Respect for other boaters.
All
That
right.
doesn't happen.
I was just curious as to what
Yeah.
he meant by that and what you meant by that.
Yeah.
We interrupt this program to bring you the much anticipated bonus code for the latest Fish in Canada giveaways. This week's code is trolling. That's trolling. TROLLING, all caps. Just type that in the bonus code section of the contest and receive 100 free entries towards all our current giveaways. For those who haven't entered yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Head on over to fishingcanada.com while you listen to the rest of this episode. Click contests and sign up for all the latest Fish in Canada giveaways. And now, back to the show. All right, time for a little fish talk with the doc. This week, it's brought to you by Sail.
Yes, sir.
Sail, the outdoor store. Your home to all things fishing, hunting, and outdoors, clothing, and much more. Head
They
on
don't
over
have
to your
hunting
local,
written in here.
But
Why is
they
that?
should.
I know. They got such a great
It's
hunting
a great,
section.
probably one of the most comprehensive hunting
God, I
sections
love it.
in a retail store
Half of
I've
a
ever
whole
seen.
upper level.
Yeah.
And great selection.
It's there.
And everything, not just guns and firearms. They got
no.
decoys. They got calls. They got, you name it, dog training gear. They got everything.
Probably have doe urine there as well.
Oh, I bet you they do. That's normal, right, Dean?
Come
that
on
stuff?
now.
Yeah.
Doe pee?
Anyways,
It's not legal.
It's not legal?
CWD, the
Oh, right.
See?
stuff we talked about
They
earlier.
don't have that.
They don't. They don't sell that. See, everybody. Sale does not sell that. Nor do they.
But they have everything else. They have all the other stuff. Head on over to your
What
local
about
sale
buck
store.
pee? It's the same thing. Yeah, you get the same thing, right? It's
Urine.
pee.
No-
yeah.
no
There's
pee allowed either.
urine at Sale.
Okay, you can take a pee there. They got a nice washer.
They have
there.
a beautiful. Actually, they have a
I
wonderful.
know they do. I told you.
facility.
I just said that.
Anyways, head on over to your local sale store. If you don't have one, go to sail.ca. That's SAIL.ca. And check out all of the various departments. They've got a sale going on all the time. I believe they still have stuff up to 60%
They
off.
do.
So
Yes.
don't, like, before you go and run out to buy something outdoors, go to sail.ca first, check it out, check the pricing, see
Check
if it's
it.
available, and then do your business. All right. He is now officially, I've got my new paperwork here. He is now officially in possession of a title that might be unique. He has published more than 1,200 peer review papers.
Come on now.
At last time we interviewed him, we
700.
said 700. So he's been
know.
a busy man, that's
know.
for sure. Look at him.
Biology professor at Carleton University, chair of the board of technical experts for the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission, and fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, none other than our very own, the lovely, the talented Dr. Cooke.
Don't forget, recently inducted in the Freshwater Fishing Hall
All
of
right,
Fame
all
for
right.
contributions to recreational fisheries science. That's a big one.
All right.
Okay.
I'm in.
Yeah,
Boy,
it's sadly not because my fish catching. So yeah,
how are you, Stephen?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Oh,
great.
good. This is that time of year for us, you know. Here's the time of year. Here's the period we're in right now. So when we spend, pretty much the entire 120 days of summer on the road, by the end of it, we've had just about enough, right? We've just about said, okay, this is like crazy. And so you come home, you lick your wounds, you relax a little bit, get everything cleaned up. And a funny thing happens right about now, January, early February. You say, man, I'd like to get back on the road again.
Just weird, eh?
And that's where we're at.
Chomping at the bit right there.
Chomping at the bit. So, yeah, we're going
I
through
guess
those
it's outdoor show season coming
Starting
up.
up,
so-
yeah.
It helps. It helps bridge things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you have downtime? Like, is yours cyclical like ours is?
Yeah, to some extent. We do a lot of the writing, data analysis, that kind of stuff in the winter months, but fish also don't take a break. We study, and our students also do winter ecology as well, just not as much of it. So,
Right.
or we go to warmer places. So we've got students doing work in the Caribbean and
Oh, there's a job.
yeah,
Man.
I have to go, weekly to check in on them. Make sure
Atta
everybody's
boy. I don't see you going to the northern part of the province there to check on that minus 32 weather, do I?
No.
No.
My basement's cold enough, as you can see by the toque. I'm good. So,
You might want to get a little heater in there, Doc.
yeah.
So normally we get you on the program because we have a question that popped up somewhere, within the community that we need answered, and we bring you on and get the answer. But
Sometimes selfishly so, too.
Selfishly
with us even.
so,
We'll
yeah.
say, hey, let's get Stephen on.
But I understand you and producer Dean
Come on
Taylor
now.
have got something else cooking now. We've actually got audience questions for you today that we're going to take an attempt and see if we can get some answers for them.
Ask
So-
a biologist.
Ask
eh?
a biologist.
Well, that's perfect.
All right.
That saves us a lot of talking too, bud.
Yeah, we can sit back and let him go.
Yeah.
Let's start right off the bat. Kyle Voden via YouTube wants to know, Doc. I have noticed a lot of grass developing on some of the Western Huron tributaries, which would cause a lack of oxygen. Obviously, this person knows a thing or two about biology. Would cause a lack of oxygen in the water during salmon's migration. I want to know if it's a direct result of phosphorus in the watershed caused by agriculture tilling the land.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So all of us eat food. Last time I checked, and that food is grown on the landscape, and there are some agricultural practices that definitely can contribute to pollution, especially if fertilizer isn't used in optimal ways, or if there's a big rainstorm right after fertilizer is applied and so on. But a lot of farmers are really been quite progressive with a lot of government support, stewardship activities, recognizing that connection between what happens in the land and what happens in our tributaries and then what dumps into our lakes and so on. So 40, 50 years ago, yeah, we could have had a show here where we sat around and, and sort of threw mud at the agricultural community. Thankfully, things have gotten a lot better. That doesn't mean that we can't do more, but in general, we've seen a lot of improvements. So yes, there are still some nutrients that come off of farm fields, but they also come out of communities. Our sewage treatment plants are not always entirely effective, but there's a lot of other things at play, and vegetation, green plants, living material isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it is producing oxygen. It's when that material dies, and it typically doesn't die in the winter. In the summer, it tends to die in the winter. We're also seeing water get clearer because of some of those improvements in agricultural processes, and that means that the light can penetrate and that plants can grow. So more vegetation doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Obviously, if a salmonid stream becomes choked with vegetation and looks more like backwater largemouth habitat, that's problematic. But a little bit of green is a good thing in our rivers and streams.
Okay. Hopefully that's the answer you were looking for, Kyle. Lawrence, you know this one?
Lawrence Bendandy. He's our buddy from fishfindermounts.com
That's
too,
right.
via Instagram.
Yep.
Okay, Dr. Stephen Cooke. Do you think funding of regulations enforcement is lacking in Ontario and possibly Canada in general?
Wow.
Yeah. Our, depending on where you are, whether you want to call them conservation officers, game wardens, fish cops, they're definitely those frontline workers that are out there. Even during the pandemic, when we were all in our basements, they were still on the job out there every day. Really important. But when I think of a conservation officer, and I recognize they carry a gun and handcuffs and a ticket book, they're educators, right? Like that's what they do. They are the people that are helping to educate the public on better fish handling practices, on how to be responsible stewards, helping people understand and decipher, which are oftentimes quite complicated regulations. It's not about running around and arresting people and charging people. It's about education. And you see so many photographs online of conservation officers at youth fishing events and, we're going to those outdoor shows to interact with people. So I just want to start with that. So, and along with that, when you are out fishing, you may or may not encounter a conservation officer. You may see somebody else breaking the law or doing something that you think is breaking the law, and be dismayed that there's a conservation officer, not there within minutes to address that. And that's because they need to balance their time and how they spend that effort. Educating people so that they comply with the laws and don't break the laws and engage with our resources in a meaningful way, such that they're at an outdoor show. That means that they're not on the water, but that's still really, really important work. The other thing is they spend a lot of time behind the scenes working with contractors, developers, working with lawyers, spending time in court, dealing with some of those bigger files. So instead of dealing with like, hey, do you have a license or not? They're dealing with large scale habitat issues. And I can guarantee you, if they bring charges forward or are able to stop pollution or some major habitat infraction, that's much better time spent than throwing tickets at a couple people because they're fishing without a license, or even have one or two fish over their allotment. And I'm not advocating for fishing without a license, but it's, with limited resources, you got to figure out where to put them. And protecting habitat is the foundation of healthy and productive fisheries. And so I don't mind that they spend time at construction offices and behind the desk dealing with those kinds of things. That's important. Could we use more conservation officers and other folks that deal with environmental enforcement? Absolutely. But the men and women that we have there on the front lines are doing their best. And just because you don't see them doesn't mean that, when you think you need them, doesn't mean that they aren't working. They're just working on things that might not involve just think of all the water that's out there. Think of the fact that they also need to sleep. Think of the fact they also need to spend time in the bush and in wetlands dealing with hunting. They can deal with aggregate resources and gravel extraction and all sorts of different issues that they end up having to deal with. So would I like to see more? Yes. But just because you don't see them doesn't mean that good things aren't happening to protect our natural resources.
See, it almost sounds from what you just said that we need another tier.
I was almost thinking the same. Whatever you're doing here, I'll tell you.
You and I, we're connected telepathically, obviously. Right?
What I was equating this to, and maybe it is going on in there, but is almost like the police on the street versus detectives. You know what I mean?
Well, not that. I'm thinking educators.
Well, the detectives could be that educator.
Think of if the cops, and they do, I'm sure they do. I'm sure the police, regular police officers spend some time at that educational level.
Yeah.
But in this case, because we have so few, or it seems the jurisdiction is so big.
It's massive.
Okay? Bigger than a city, bigger than it's massive. It almost seems like we should have enforcement officers, and they're one-dimensional. They're the guys
boots on the ground
with the gun and the handcuffs
Absolutely.
and the ticket book, right?
Yep.
And they're following leads and they're, making busts and all that stuff. And then you've got another level, which is strictly education. Because I do agree with you. One of the biggest problems we have in wildlife management in general is lack of education. So to put a conservation officer in that position, I think is almost wasting.
Well, that's because
time
of budget,
money.
though. That's because
of budget.
They can't pay another guy to do that, so we'll make you do everything, sort of thing. The poor people, there's just not enough. I looked it up quickly on Mr. Google there, and 20 to 25 years ago in Ontario.
20 to what?
20 to 25 years ago-ish. We had 280 conservation officers in Ontario.
Okay. Which was not enough.
And in 2021, it was down to 184. So and that's the last I could find.
Wow.
I don't have any current number of it's gone down even more than that. But that's that's 100 officers less in that time frame. And they were looking for 25 new officers in that 21 time, but we don't even know if I can't find anything on it. I don't know. Maybe Stephen knows more about that. Do you have any idea of numbers?
Yeah, I would like to think they've been doing some building, and Facebook. I follow a couple sites that tell me a little bit about what the conservation officers in Ontario are up to, and they're showing, every couple months I'll see a new cohort coming out. That's a good thing.
Right.
But we've also, Sir Sanford Fleming College, which is in Peterborough, Lindsay area, they are where the bulk of the conservation officers get trained before they have a fish and wildlife program that's really good at preparing that next generation of folks folks that will get brought in and then go through formal CO training, they've had to mothball a number of their programs due to some funding limitations. So I don't want to get into the academic. This is an issue that extends across universities and colleges in Ontario and beyond, partly driven by the lack of international students that we've been using to sort of cover costs and other things. So I certainly have concern, as do others, about the future if that pathway for recruiting new COs isn't there. So we'll see. Hopefully, Sir Sanford Fleming is able to rectify that, because they're such an important service to our province.
Agreed.
Anyways, it's an interesting topic. Maybe one we should dedicate a little more time to on another show.
And the other provinces, because we don't know anything about those other provinces, right? What is their situation? Are they like Ontario right now, or is it better somewhere? And is that a good methodology to use for your, I don't know. It's just it's a great subject.
Great question.
One other thing that's happening behind the scenes now is they do have intelligence officers and this is obviously happening at an international scale with Interpol as it relates to, for example, the trade of endangered species across international borders, but also within Canada as well. So instead of having to sort of, sleuth around on the street, given technology, there's a lot that can be scraped from the internet, from social media sites. Where are people selling illegal goods, or where is there evidence of routine law breaking? Where are they seeing images posted of fishing out of season? So there's a lot of behind the scenes intelligence gathering and analysis that goes on that's entirely computer based, which is a new frontier for us. Right. You don't think of fish and wildlife crime being fought from a computer, but that's also happening so that you can direct those field officers to where they need to be, instead of, hey, Ontario's big, just cruise around and see what you happen to encounter. It's much more targeted, and it needs to be because of the limited resources, and that extends across Canada. Canada is big, a blessing and a curse.
And there are no shortage of dummies who commit crime against wildlife and proudly put it up on the internet.
Oh my God.
To share with their buddies. Eh?
Look
There's
at me.
no shortage
I'm
of those
Bobby
goats.
Dazzler. Look
Oh
at me.
My God. Anyways. All right. Nick Tyron via
Tryon.
That's what I said, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. You just came right back with that. I love it. Via Instagram. What causes muskies to have different patterns on them?
This is a great question.
From, some are clear, some are spotted, as we know, and then you've got some that are striped, some are vibrant, some are flat. What causes that? I mean, it's the same, whatever your answer is, I'm sure it can also be discussed in relationship to other species like bass and walleye, et cetera. Yeah. But carry on.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a couple things at play there. So within a water body, so let's just take an isolated water body, and within it, when you're fishing, you will catch some fish that look a little bit different than others. And that's just the natural variation that's driven largely by genetics. And so if over time, especially if that system has been isolated and there hasn't been any stocking, through time, the genetic complement in there might select for something that makes more sense. So for example, if it's a weedy system, then vertical bars might be more adaptive. Adaptive meaning that it allows you to hide better within weeds, right. More cryptic to, say, an osprey flying overhead, also more cryptic for the fish that you want to eat. So, a pumpkin seed swims by, it doesn't notice you, you burst down and you've got yourself a quick meal. If there's survival benefit, so if you have stripes, and that means that you eat more, less likely to die, you're going to have more babies. Those babies are going to get passed along relative to an animal that might not have those same stripes. They might not be as effective at feeding. They might not be survive as well. And those genes sort of drop out of the population. So at a lake level, we can see that going on. Just those genetic principles sort of playing out, natural selection, survival of the fittest. And yes, stripes could make one more fit than spots or no pattern in a given water body. And then when we start looking across water bodies, you've got systems that are deeper, clear, maybe more rocks. So I'm thinking about some of the areas in the St. Lawrence where people fish for muskellunge. There, maybe the spots or less stripy, spotty stuff at all might be more advantageous. So there are, of course, mutations. Genetics do odd things. And so every once in a while you get something that is a real oddity, which might stand out relative to other fish that you routinely catch in that system. So it doesn't mean in a lake that's got lots of vegetation, all the fish will always be stripy, because when genes come together, interesting things happen, including mutations. So yeah, it's a bit about genetics, but a lot of it's about what we call local adaptation. And what are those adaptations that tailor that animal to the conditions in which it lives and allows it to thrive?
In terms of bass, they seem to be able to turn it on and off a little more than most other predator fish that certainly that we've been associated with. Smallmouth bass especially. I mean, as you know, you can go from light to dark instantly. You put them in a live well and they change colors, right?
Like a Lake Ontario fish is flat, nothing, and then boom.
That's obviously, it has everything to do with their environment, as you just mentioned, with the muskie,
it's gotta be something
vertical.
With aggressiveness too, though, doesn't it? With the smallie, is he pissed off and he gets all those stripes, or is that just a...
Yeah, and a stress response. So,
same idea.
They've just exercised, and instead of rosy cheeks that we might get, sometimes that's manifested in color changes as well. Oh. But also them trying to, adjust to life in a live well, for example. Right. So there is some, we call it plasticity. So some things are set genetically, like the shape of your nose, for example, unless you get plastic surgery, that's more or less fixed. But, you can spend time in the sun tanning, right? And get a slightly darker complexion. Right. You can spend time at the gym sort of shaping your physique. And so there's some plasticity within a body. And for fish, some of that plasticity we see in color. So that same fish can be very different colors, depending on the day, depending on the environment and so on. But it's limited. A bass isn't going to turn blue. It's not going to all of a sudden look like a coral trout or a dolphin fish, a dorado. They've got a limited range in which they can change.
They can lose color too. Can they not? Because I caught a largemouth in the fall this year that was almost silver. Like the lack of green and yellow in it was like, it freaked me out. I thought, what is that? So can they lose pigmentation too?
Absolutely. But you're also getting to a time of year, when do the weeds die? They start to die off in the fall. Largies move out of those shallow, weedy bays into more offshore areas. Yeah. And having a bunch of bars when you don't need them isn't as advantageous, perhaps, as being a little bit more silvery and sleek and perhaps harder to see against a more open background that's just water. So
that I like that, but in this case, every other largemouth we caught in that same area, and the green weeds that are there, they were all beautiful green. In that fall when they get crazy nice green, this guy was like unbelievably less colored. One more on the muskies. Yep. Go back, guys, before we take off. Stephen, if a barred muskie and a spotted muskie spawn together, could a clear muskie be produced?
So plus,
I don't know, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know that there's been much work in that space, because what we do know is that if you want fish from Georgian Bay to do well in Georgian Bay and you're going to raise them in a hatchery, you take those genes from Georgian Bay. Again, that's local adaptation. Mother Nature's done that over the past 11,000 years or so since the last ice age that covered this area. And so that tailoring has always already happened. I don't know what happens when you put together those. It's not going to be uniform, though. I can tell you that. It's not that every fish will come out the same. That's the way genetics work. There's some shuffling. Every baby isn't identical. Some of those babies will die within a couple days of hatching for various reasons. And then there'll be the very few that make it for the long term. There's something unique usually about those ones that make it the long term. It could be coloration, but it could be lots of other things as well.
The reason I said that, Ange, just is because I've gone this my whole life is Labrador retrievers. You have a black lab and a yellow lab that breed together. They could be all black labs coming out. That yellow influence, it could be all black labs that come out. I thought
you were going to say they produce chocolate labs.
You could have two black labs that produce yellow labs, which is really weird.
How about chocolate?
The chocolate, you can't eat that shit. You don't eat that anymore, do you? That's not. I have a chocolate lab right now.
Yellow and black labs produce chocolate.
Here's my theory on chocolate labs: is that if you take a chocolate lab female with a block of cement, you will get a chocolate lab. Because I got a cement head of a dog right now, I'll tell you.
How about food? How much does it play in this game of color? And I say that because we've all caught walleye that from certain parts of the world that definitely have more of a bluish hue to them than, say, a standard walleye. And, we've always called them, it's blue walleye. Well,
blue peckerel.
Blue peckerel, right? But yet, you find out, well, no, it's just what that particular strain is exposed to food-wise. Does it play a bigger role in coloration and maybe even patterning on the fish at all?
It can play a role, but again, there's that plasticity, right? There's limited scope for change there. Obviously, if we eat nothing but carrots, we're going to turn a little bit orange. And if there is a certain food item that's available that has certain characteristics like carotenoids that would be conducive to those changes, you see that. You see that sometimes with the flesh of fish. Sometimes it doesn't always manifest on the outside, it's on the inside. So depending on what fish are feeding on. And I'm thinking off the top of my head here more about some of the things like Chinook, king salmon, when they're out in the ocean. Are they feeding on krill or are they feeding on herring? And that can lead to quite different flesh coloration as well. So food certainly plays a role as well, but that assumes that your food actually has some range of color. And most of our freshwater fish around here and invertebrates, aside from like some of the crayfish, I've seen some smallies that I've caught that have been awfully orange, leading to almost into the red coloration. Wow. I wonder if that's gorging oneself on crayfish that are a certain species with certain coloration. But by and large, I don't think color plays a huge role around here.
Okay. There's an experiment for you.
Yeah.
You could take any fish, we'll use a largemouth again, and feed them goldfish exclusively. Goldfish, and the other one straight minnows in another tank, and see if there was ever a coloration after a couple of years or something. That'd be cool.
I used to feed our fish goldfish
They love
goldfish. Oh my God.
Man, do they love them. Hey, they take them over minnows every time. They see that nice little flash of orange and they're
it's almost like they know that, they're not, they can't move. They can't. They're just sort of wallowing around, and they're bright. And they can see them.
Nice fat things. Okay, here we go.
Anyways, poor goldfish people are listening. You guys are so mean. You're feeding goldfish.
No, we're feeding real fish. For these little things. So, anyways, the next question.
That experiment's playing out in real time right now. Hamilton Harbor is just full of goldfish, and I think things like bowfin and pike and largemouth are probably enjoying themselves. As you say, they're brightly colored. They don't do a good job of hiding. Aren't the fastest swimmers. Soft-bodied, easy to digest. Yeah.
And walleye too. Hamilton Harbor's got some good walleye now. Apparently it's like world class.
Well, if they're feeding on goldfish, I can understand
They're going to
why.
be bigger now. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. It says, this is from Charlie Harmon via YouTube. Could the solution to some of our fishery declines, like Atlantic salmon, brook trout, cutthroats, etc., be found in genetic engineering, i.e. produce more heat-tolerant fish, etc.?
Yeah. So short answer is yes, but there's a lot to unpack there. And so first of all, there can be ethical issues that society needs to wrestle with. This isn't about a fisheries manager to decide whether or not we should genetically engineer animals that we release in the wild. That's sort of a big picture societal discussion. And we've seen some things with genetically modified foods, and some people will intentionally avoid purchasing them. Others, are indifferent or don't care or haven't been paying attention to what's going on. It's absolutely possible to engineer fish, selectively breed fish for certain characteristics. And the technology is getting better and better. And in fact, there's already been research that's been funded in Canada. A couple of years ago, there was a big project funded by Genome Canada to look at rainbow trout fisheries in British Columbia, working with the Freshwater Fisheries Society of BC, professors, mostly from BC. There are a few others involved I was involved as well, being here in Ontario. And it was about that very question. What do we need to do to ensure that our recreational rainbow trout fisheries, and there's a lot of stocking that happens there. There's a lot of small inland lakes, but also thinking about steelhead, the natural runs, and also some of the stream river fisheries where you've got native rainbow trout populations. But what's that going to look like in the future? And can we identify characteristics of fish that will allow them to thrive in that condition? And so it's not just heat tolerant, can you live or die? We want them to be able to grow. You want them to be able to reproduce. So yes, that work is already underway, but we're not necessarily seeing those fish released across the countryside yet. Every time we bring animals into nature, there's some selection that occurs, right? Whether that be because we want brighter tomatoes and that stay firm longer in our fridge. With fish, when we bring them into captivity, fish that are more reserved, meek, shy, they're not going to do well in those hatchery tanks. They're not going to get the same amount of food. It's going to be those bolder individuals that are able to do much better. And so anytime we bring fish into captivity, we tend to produce animals that are a little bit bolder and that are pretty good at fighting over that trout chow. So yeah, lots that can be done. Some of these genetic tools, though, I think where their real promise might be is with invasive species. There's some really interesting, potentially scary if things went amok. We don't want dinosaurs accidentally or mastodons accidentally being brought back to our landscapes. But there are ways to manipulate invasive species such that they essentially breed themselves out of to death, basically. So you can put in genes where those animals are unable to pass on other genes or that actually kill other individuals they interact with. So I think there's some promise there as well for maybe being able to get rid of some of these invasives that have been really tough to handle.
Are we not doing that now? Are there not programs in place now where we have manufactured mule males or females of a particular species and release them out there so that they wouldn't, perpetuate their kind type of thing? It's been going on for a number of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I don't know the deer example well enough to comment on whether or not that was genetic manipulation or simply releasing sterile males. So you can actually,
that's it. Yeah. To me, that's the same thing, right? You're engineering something that is abnormal and releasing it to have a certain effect on natural.
It's a bit different, and I'll give you an example with sea lamprey. So for a while, the sea lamprey control program had a sterile male release.
Right.
But they had to, so you've got a male that is fertile in your hands. You literally hold him up to a device that injects him with something. It was called Bisazur, is the name of the chemical, and it's sterilized. It was a chemical sterilant, and then you release the animal. So it's not that you are creating a bunch of animals genetically, it's that you are chemically castrating that animal so that when it goes and it still goes and reproduces, and so they spawn with the ladies, and the ladies are like, sweet, I got myself a good male here, but he's shooting blanks. So that's the way that works. So she's wasting her eggs on a male that can't fertilize them. So that program was discontinued. But they are now working on, and this isn't anywhere near field rollout right now, but there's a lot of behind the scenes work going on lamprey right now to look at genetic control methods. So that is the next frontier, but there's a lot of societal issues to work through, as I said, and a lot of tech, genetic technology that still needs to be refined. You want to get it right.
Yeah.
No kidding. It seemed like an awful long, slow process.
Yeah.
To go out and catch a male
versus
lamprey and inject it and then put it back. Like I can't even get my head around how many it would take to just see some sort of result.
Right.
And how long does that result take?
Versus just killing the males to begin with, right?
Well, there's that too, right?
But he's right. This is a longevity thing. This is year after year of spawning, right?
The only thing that Steven said that kind of made me feel okay about it was that he says you're wasting the female's eggs.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because if you just go out and kill all the males, eventually there are still some males out there.
She's going to find the right,
exactly.
She's going to find a dude.
But if you're wasting,
and males get around. Like sperm is cheap, and most male fish
just
are
like a human, just like a human.
Yeah.
You know what? We just did a podcast recently, Stephen, with rusty crayfish and marbled crayfish. I wonder if that's somehow they could do that with those. I mean, without affecting our natural. That's again what Stephen says. You got to be real careful because our natural crayfish might be affected. But if you could do somehow genetically make them not reproduce. The one is male and female. Which one was that, guys?
The marble, I think.
The marble.
The marble.
Yeah, marble.
So you'd have to really work on that one, but it might be something because they're out of control, right? Stephen, as you probably know, they're out of control. And the Kawarthas here, Rice Lake, is talking about Lake of the Woods for rusties and that. It's crazy.
All I know is that when you start screwing around with nature, usually it goes bad. Right, we've done it for so many centuries that we've been playing around with nature, and every time that we say, "Yeah, I got it figured out. Here's what we're gonna," it just doesn't.
We're
work
smarter
out.
Now. That's when Stephen had 700. Now he's got 1,200 of these reviews done. Okay, we're getting better all the time.
All right. Josh, by the way, if we don't get to all of these, I guess we can all agree that we can just save them for the next one, right?
Yeah, because I like these. These are great. I think this is a great podcast.
But I also don't want to rush them because there's some Josh Everett via YouTube says, what are your thoughts on the extended fall seasons? Oh, this is going to be a good subject. At the mouths of heavily fished rivers. The decline of steelhead populations is evident in rivers with fish tracking stations. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Do you think that steelhead runs would benefit from a closed season like we have seen recently with salmon?
Yeah. There's obviously high levels of catch and release with the steelhead. That tends to be sort of the characteristics of those that are at least successfully targeting steelhead. A reminder that steelhead are non-native. They were introduced, although there's certainly a fish that we value, and that there's active efforts to ensure that those populations are sustained. But when you're talking about fish like that have been introduced, I'm sort of the mindset that they're there to be used, that it was a resource. It was a calculated decision to put them in there, not because, we wanted to increase biodiversity, so let's add a new species.
No.
It was to create an opportunity for the recreational fishing community. And so in instances like that, I think it is important that we remember why, and that creating fishing opportunities for people to interact makes sense. I can't speak to the details of how much pressure they can sustain. Steelhead are reasonably robust to catch and release at coolish temperatures.
Right.
And around here, the temperatures aren't, they're not on the edge in the same way that we've seen in some other places. The steelhead around here are doing okay. So yeah, I think that I like fishing for steelhead, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of sense in trying to constrain them. Some of the reasons that fishing restrictions are put on, and we've seen that in Port Hope, right? That's where the Yeah, thanks. Is that really about fish, or is that about conflict between people, residents, parking issues, and so on? So
good point.
Sometimes fisheries, on occasion, and for better or for worse, sometimes fishing regulations are used to address other issues that are not specific to the sustainability of a population or a fish stock. So.
Yeah, in that case, Port Hope is a classic example. It has very little to do with the fishery itself, but more with human nature to take advantage of and to be inconsiderate and all that to the local folks. And I'm talking about anglers that go in that community once or twice a year and just have at it, and littering all over the place. And the parking is an issue, and it is an issue.
Sure it is.
And so it's not a fisheries thing, but it's a human. Like people, I sometimes just
shake your head, don't you?
I question it.
Shake your head at people.
I just question it.
I lived in Port Hope for many years, Stephen, and I experienced. I did the fall fishing for steelhead for a while, but then I got out of steelhead fishing completely. Did my hunting and everything else, so I let it go. That I think everybody needs to know that the numbers of anglers that hit these smaller stretches of river towards the end of the year is way down from, let's say, opening day on Port Hope. So the Ganaraska River on opening day, I will guarantee you there's more dead fish caught, killed, and whatever they want to kill them for in that one day of opening day than there is in the entire from September, October, November of the mouth of that river. There's just no way, because these anglers that are there, the few that are there are hardcore. They really love their fishery. And like Stephen said, there's a lot of catch and release that's going on. As a matter of fact, it's probably 95% catch and release. These guys are very good at what they do. They just want to catch a fish and enjoy it and release it. And, and maybe they'll keep a small female for some spawn for the spring or something like that. But they're very, very, they're
conscientious.
Conscientious anglers, exactly. So I think by stopping that, we really would be doing nothing. I honestly.
But how do you separate? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff?
You don't. I mean, you can't. There's going to be a bad apple in every bag of apples, right? So that got bad apple. You got to. Now, I'll tell you another thing. These ardent, really good and conscientious anglers are good stewards. So if you're there and you don't know shit about what you're doing and you're kicking a steelhead up the bank because you want to keep them, somebody's going to come over and talk to you about it and then enlighten you about it and say, hey, you know what, buddy, you might not want to keep this whole limit of fish here. You know what? You see everybody else is catching releases. Sometimes it's just a bit of ignorance and somebody can tell them.
But that turns into a shit show, right?
It could. It certainly could.
It
depends.
Does.
Not always, though. Not always, but it happens.
Not all.
So,
we've done some work on the Bulkley in BC, and obviously that's drawing a very specialized steelhead angler. Super sort of, the angling elite, people that spend their lives dreaming and, about steelhead. And we see on average their fish are caught and released 2 to 3 times a year, a season. and they still go up and spawn. So with good handling, release rates, and if people are releasing fish, survival is quite high, and those animals do go about their business. We do have to keep an eye on warm weather years, obviously. Hot water can mix that up. And take opportunities when we see them to educate others on how to handle fish well and make responsible stewardship decisions when they're in the field and fishing.
It could be said, though, that the Bulkley is it's like the unicorn of steelhead rivers, I think, right? It is so perfect. There is not a better place on this planet that suits the steelhead better than the Bulkley River. It's got everything. It's perfect. It's nirvana for steelhead and steelhead anglers. And you're right. The people that do go there is no riffraff on the Bulkley.
No,
there is no riffraff.
These aren't those
they're hardcore
fish kickers. No.
Yeah, no, they're hardcore, and they would rather die themselves than to
kill one.
Fish.
Right.
But places like Port Hope and where Josh is talking. The other thing he says here. We haven't talked about is he's saying that there is evidence to show that a decline of steelhead on rivers that use fish tracking stations. Do you know what he'd be referring to there at all, or why?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he's sort of implying that the fish tracking data reveal a decline or that I'm not really sure. So so for example, in Port Hope at the Fishway, they have a counter. They use cameras. They can identify which species pass and when. And those are on some of the other systems as well. On occasion, they also use radio tags in terms of electronic trackers as well. But I'm unaware of any link between those two.
So there's no evidence as far as you're concerned showing that where we have really gotten involved with that local fishery in terms of data collection that it's hurt the population at all?
No, I think I'm thinking the question is just not quite fully fleshed out. Okay. I get the fact that we should always question the scientific research monitoring methods we use to make sure that they're not doing more harm than good. But a fish counter in a fishway isn't going to make a difference between whether or not that fish passes or not.
Right.
And then same thing with the radio tags now. Very high survival rates. Know how to do that quite well.
An argument could be made. I remember years ago when I was hanging out on the rivers quite a bit. I had this one older gentleman who wasn't an angler, but he was down at the Ganaraska. Anyways, one of the rivers. And he was really pissed off because he was watching, no, it wasn't the Ganaraska. But anyways, they were lifting fish over the obstruction so that they could go up above to the spawning grounds. Maybe, it was Bowmanville. They were lifting him to go up over top so that they could spawn. And the guy was just irate. He was even yelling at the guys who were actually working on the cage and stuff. And I had a little chat with him. And I finally, I had to say to him, but okay, so you do understand that two things. Number one, these fish are not native here. And secondly, if those guys who are down there working hard don't put them up over the top, chances are they're not going to reproduce. They won't be laying eggs.
Right.
So
what did he say?
even if they might be bothering them and maybe harming the odd one inadvertently, it's all for the good because they won't reproduce. He understood. He got it. He really thought that we were just in there interfering and mucking around with a wild fish.
I wonder what would have been going through his
head. But he was not an angler.
Why,
he was not an angler. He just strolled down.
I wonder what his thoughts were. Why are they doing this?
Yeah, it was weird. Because, it's a pretty impressive operation when you see all these fish.
These guys,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason we have all of those dams in tributaries of almost all of the tributaries of the Great Lakes towards the mouth is for lamprey. So they are barriers. Lamprey can't jump. And so you create a barrier. Lamprey can't get past, but you want your other members of the fish community to pass. So we call that selective fish passage. We want to pass everything except the lamprey, maybe we don't want to pass grass carp, maybe, so how do you do that? And so there's still today a lot of questions about how to do that without having to have some dude sit there and sort the animals. There's still a lot of trap, sort, release, because it's very effective. You're not going to accidentally transfer a lamprey. Whereas if we have engineers design a fishway that we think a lamprey can't get up, it's quite possible that we will have some mistakes there, because fish are remarkable and lamprey are remarkable, and they'll figure out a way. So there's a big project underway on the Boardman River in Michigan. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission is putting in an experimental fishway, and it's going to be a place where they can manipulate all sorts of things to figure out that selective side of things. How do we block lamprey, but allow everything that we want to get past to get past? So it's this really cool, instead of having to, bring in the engineers and, the pour new concrete and so on, it's a fishway that they're able to change everything, configure everything using aluminum plates and other things to test. So each year they'll configure it in different ways to try and figure out what works. Once they know what works, then they'll go back and start to retrofit some of these dams that exist across the Great Lakes Basin.
Wow.
Oh, that'd be a great project
cool.
to see.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
What do we got? We got one more?
Next, Jonathan Penders via Instagram. If fish are picking up on the signal from forward-facing sonar.
Oh boy, we talked about this with Steve.
That's right. We did a whole thing with Steven on this.
Yeah.
Would a scrambled signal cause more disruption to the fish with it always changing the signal waves?
Yes.
Especially, and this is what Angelo was talking about, maybe they could change the signal to help us versus the fish, but especially on fish that rely heavily on their lateral lines to feel vibrations to find food.
Yeah, we did talk about this last time, and I think we sort of came to the conclusion that there's actually not a whole lot of evidence that fish can, feel or somehow sense those waves, the energy that's coming off of these devices. The manufacturers of these, if they thought it was a fish repeller, I'm pretty sure that their pros wouldn't be flogging them like they are. In fact, as scientists, we want to identify technologies that can repel fish, and sonar is not an approach that we've been using to do that. We use noise. We use bubble curtains, but it's not. And I know noise. The sound. It is sound energy that's coming off of these devices, but it's at levels that we don't think are detectable by fish. So I think that's the big take home message there. And I say fish. There are perhaps some fish that can. Sharks are incredible. They have not just a lateral line system, but also things, especially on their head, that give them really unique sensory capabilities. But usually when we're concerned about sonar and what it's doing to animals, it's the marine mammals we're concerned about. So, and even there, it tends to be more military grade sonar that is problematic. When submarines are doing their thing, there's certainly evidence of some marine mammal kills in the past arising from that. But first of all, we don't have marine mammals in our. I want to say all, but most of our freshwater systems in BC. There's out east. There's certainly a few places where our marine mammals swim way upstream and hang out in lakes. Harrison Lake in British Columbia. There's certainly seals in there, and not a hint of any salt water. But in general, I don't think this is a big issue, or we would have
done something.
Yeah, pros aren't going to have a repeller on the front of their boat. And the fact you can see the animal and interact with them, you're not just chasing fish that are always running the other way. You're able to watch them interact with your bait, to watch them do what fish do. It's not always just, hey, watch their tails as they swim away from you. We're not chasing fish typically with these devices. So I know that's all pretty anecdotal, but I'm not overly concerned. And as an angler, I wouldn't be taking it off the front of my boat or not purchasing it for fear that we're chasing the fish around.
How about those devices that were really popular for a while? I don't think they're quite as popular, although
you're
some
going
of
the same place I'm going. I think I was thinking the same thing.
Some
again.
of the big
we are something else today. If it is hydrowave, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, where they actually induce, they create sounds in the hull of the boat that actually attract fish.
The hydrowave is a perfect example. It's a little speaker that emits out these noises that are shad and that are crayfish and that are all these sounds. Are they the real deal? Is it a myth?
Fish can hear, but in a very, and it varies from species to species. They have their own species-specific range. And we're learning increasingly that fish communicate with each other, and they do so through sounds. Some animals have some fish have very obvious sound-producing mechanisms. So we think of the drum. And so in freshwater, that would be things like the freshwater drum. And they grunt. You can hear that when you're handling them sometimes. They do the same thing underwater. Really loud. Similarly, a lot of fish in the snapper complex. If you're fishing off Florida, there's a lot of sound there. But there's a lot of the freshwater species that we just simply don't know if they make sound or not, or communicate in any ways. It's probably not going to hurt, but it's also... It's not probably where I would invest my dollars. Again, I think I'd focus on trying to understand a water body, understand the fish in it. Trying to trick them and lure in prey with sound seems a little bit over the top. So
I could ask you a question here because it just dawned on me. We've spent our entire lives trying to figure fish out. Why? Because we pursue fish. We made a career out of fish. We have raised families by understanding fish. Now, here we are talking to a fish biologist, a scientist totally immersed in that culture who fishes, and we've never really asked him, have you figured it all out? Like, you go fishing, but you obviously don't go fishing like we do. We go out there and say, gee, I don't know, like, what are we going to, where? Like, you must go out in a totally different level when you go out fishing because you understand these things.
Are you the Superman of fishing? Are you
the whisperer of fishing?
I think I'm probably among the most frustrated of all anglers on the planet because you would think.
Too much info.
You would think.
Exactly.
The answer is no. Fish are always, they've failed to read the textbooks. They failed to read my papers. And even when you know where they are, you can't necessarily get them to bite.
It's so true.
There are all sorts of things at play. And I think I'll flip it around. I don't think we would go fishing if it was so easy that it wasn't work, that it wasn't that little element of frustration. Yeah. I love catching bluegill with my kids. After day 3 at the cottage, it's just so easy that it starts to get boring, even for the kids. Yeah. Having that day where you struggle, getting skunked on occasion. I think that's what keeps us fishing and coming back. So
I agree.
I think we want fishing to be good, but I don't think we want, I don't ever want it to be a certainty, that I go out and I know exactly what I get. I know exactly where I'm going to get it. That's what keeps us guessing. It's that mystery, the curiosity that I think keeps us coming back.
Well,
I think that would separate that separates the anglers from the meat eaters. If it was real easy, I think it would just be a meat eating thing. It would just be, okay, let's catch them and kill them and let's eat them and all that. There'd be nothing to it, right?
I guess it's a good thing that the formula does not exist, right? Because then you're right. Our fisheries would not be doing as well as it's doing today, right? So because it would just go out and catch, kill.
Yeah.
So
there are things, as we've talked about, and as you surely know, that can tip the scales in your favor. But it doesn't guarantee it. You can have the most knowledge about a given water body. You can have the latest and greatest technology on the boat. You could have been there yesterday and absolutely slayed them, and you could walk away today skunked.
Yep.
That's fishing.
That's true.
I asked you that question because sometimes, we feel the pressure because people kind of expect that of us, right? That we just go out and if we take them out fishing, it's going to be a catch fest. I mean, why wouldn't it? That's what we do for a living. Well, I equated that to you, talking to you all this time. And I'm thinking, well, does this guy just go out and stand in the boat and the fish just jump in and say, okay, all right, but anyways.
I got a quick story for you, both you guys, and you'll like it. You guys will like it. And it's exactly what Stephen was just saying. So Mike Burris is a buddy of mine from Napanee. He knows the Bay of Quinte really well. Okay, Mikey and I fished for half a day on Quinte this last fall. The week before, he and Dean Thompson, another buddy of ours, went out and smashed them, all in these same areas. So Mikey and I went back to these waypoints now, not just the broad stuff, the waypoints that we're going to work. We had nothing in our boat by noon. Okay, and Mikey's an expert. And to rub it in even more, we were going down the bank. And we came to a dock, and a husband and wife standing there, and the guy was saying, and that's we blew our minds. We said, no, we're not doing very good. We haven't got anything so far. He says, oh, I heard that Dean Thompson and Mike Burris were here last week, and they smashed him. This is the guy on my boat. He didn't recognize Mikey. He says, they smashed him. We started laughing and said, this is Mike Burris. And he says, yeah, we smashed him here. Long story short, I dropped Mikey off at the boat launch, and I says, I cannot get skunked for the day. I have to go out, Mikey. And I went further out. I caught one largemouth that whole day. Wow. One stinking 1.5 pound largemouth that whole day on water that we know is ridiculously good. So things changed. Whatever the reason there was something that changed, it was void of fish in the areas, or they weren't biters or whatever. You know what I mean? It was so bizarre. But that's so true what you said. It can change in a day,
Yeah, it's crazy. That's why we love it. That's why we pursue it. It drives us crazy, and that's part of the game, right?
Yep.
One final question that we've got to definitely got to go here. I think it's important because it really sums up everything that we just said here in this last segment. Kyle Hansen via Facebook wants to know, why did you decide to pursue fish biology as a career?
Yeah. Well, it's because of people like you watching TV shows as a kid, really getting interested in fish biology, fish ecology. I did inherit a tackle box from my grandpa's when I was 7 years old. And my parents were good enough to drive me to the local, tackle shops and ponds and rivers. But it was really through magazines at the time and TV shows. This is obviously pre-internet. Yeah. That's what got me hooked on fishing. And then starting to think about, there's this environmental sector as a career. So started getting interested in that. But at some point along the way, probably through things like outdoor shows, start to realize, whoa, there are these booths and there's a biologist, there's a Ministry of Natural Resources biologist or fisheries manager. You learn more about M&R and fisheries management, and then wanted to go down that path. And it was during my first year of university that I was working with a graduate student on research that I got the research itch. And so research really is, it's about asking questions, that we don't know the answer to and trying to understand how the world works. And so research seemed to be the perfect blend for me, obviously in the space of fisheries. And we do a lot of recreational fisheries science, so I can legitimately fish with rod and reel and call it work. So that's how things sort of connected. And certainly love that choice. And it's not all, on a boat, interacting interacting with fish, spend a lot of time in boardrooms, advising governments, working on, helping to support policy development, training the next generation of not just fish biologists, but environmental decision makers, and having a whole lot of fun along the way. So, yeah.
Excellent.
You're extremely good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the bottom line of the whole thing. If there was ever somebody who was made for it, it's you. You do a great job, and we appreciate you having you on the program, man. All right, I think that's it for now. We'll save the rest for another day.
Yeah, I love these. I hope we can do some more of these. This
For sure,
is great.
man.
I mean, I think for everybody involved. So.
Stephen, thank you very much, my friend. Keep up the publishing. Maybe we can get you up to 2,000 before the end of the...
by next week. Way he's going.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Stephen.
We'll talk to you soon. Dr. Stephen Cooke, 1,200 peer-reviewed
papers.
And recently inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. For contributions to Recreational Fisheries Centre. And here on the Outdoor Journal, he's the fish.
He's our doc.
He's the doc, man. Fish doc.
He said something there that very quickly to the audience. He said something there. He says, it's not all out in the field. Well, you think Ange and I are always out in the field. Look what we're doing right now. Right here, we're doing this. We're going through editing processes. We're doing that. So it's not all about the field stuff. But when it happens, it is fun. So,
Here. We're not going to quit this job soon.
Not today. Not until Stephen has another 400 papers out.
Exactly. All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Before we let you go, I want to remind you about the J&B Cycle and Marine involvement in the show with their contest. But more importantly, it's Ontario's largest Princecraft and Mercury dealer. And if you haven't checked them out, go check them out on the site. If you're in the area, Timmins, Sudbury, either one of those two places, go in and say hey to Rob and the boys and the girls that work there. Great people to get not only boat packages, although that's really their strength, but just to get a lot of other outdoor products and information into your hands.
Heck yeah. This time of year, ATVs, snowmobiles, the whole time, for us right now that we're recording.
They're probably, I'm just wondering, they're probably working on spring already.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? Like their stock is starting
Who was I talking to somebody yesterday? They're working on 2027 or 28 stuff already. And I thought, what the hell?
That's even worse than us.
Oh, my God.
Dean, anything we're missing, buddy,
No, we have some contests coming up. So J&B is giving away another Mercury motor. We announced our winner a few weeks ago at this point on the website, so you can check out to see who won that.
Perfect.
I don't want to make any announcements on this podcast because I'm not certain on the airing date, but make sure you check the page because there's always new stuff up there.
Always new giveaways on fish. I got a nice comment for the other day on the phone from a friend of ours. He said, man, you guys with this contest, I thought it was just going to be a little thing a few years ago. He started it's a big deal, isn't it?
It's the deal.
It's the deal, man. It's all there at fishingcanada.com. It's free of charge. Go in. It's yours. Have at it. Make sure you get into all the contests. Don't just get into one. Whatever's available up there, get in. It's all free of charge. That are it. On behalf of the entire team here, Vova and Dean, and of course Pete, I'm Ange. Talk to you next time, folks. This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio has been brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. J&B Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures.